Charu Patram. Very beautiful. Translation. The Lord showed, if someone could put the Bhagavatam up for Prabhupada, please. The Lord showed his lotus feet by raising them. His lotus feet are the source of all awards achieved by devotional service, free from material contamination. Such awards are for those who worship him in pure devotion. The splendor of the transcendental rays from his moon-like toenails and fingernails appeared like the petals of a flower. Please repeat after me. The Lord showed his lotus feet by raising them. His lotus feet are the source of all awards achieved by devotional service, free from material contamination. Such awards are for those who worship him in pure devotion. The splendor of the transcendental rays from his moon-like toenails and fingernails appeared like the petals of a flower. Such a beautiful verse. Purport. The Lord fulfills the desires of everyone just as one desires. Pure devotees are interested in achieving the transcendental service of the Lord, which is non-different from him. Therefore, the Lord is the only desire of the pure devotees, and devotional service is the only spotless process for achieving his favour. Srila Rupa Goswami says in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that pure devotional service is jnana kamajana vritam. Pure devotional service is without any tinge of speculative knowledge and fruitive activities. Such devotional service is able to award the pure devotee the highest result, namely direct association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. According to the Gopala Tapani Upanishad, the Lord showed one of the many thousands of petals of his lotus feet. It is said, Ramano Savanavata Anavartame Dayata Stuta Paradante So Buddhyata Gopaveshame Purashtat Avir Bhabuva. After penetrating for millions of years, Lord Brahma could understand the transcendental form of the Lord as Sri Krishna in the dress of a cowherd boy, and thus he recorded his experience in the Brahma Samhita in the famous prayer, Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. So the Lord showed his lotus feet by raising them. His lotus feet are the source of all awards achieved by devotional service, free from material contamination. Such awards are for those who worship him in pure devotion. The splendor of the transcendental rays from his moon-like toenails and fingernails appeared like the petals of a flower. We can meditate on that verse all day. Krishna's beautiful lotus feet and the rays coming, the moonlight rays, the soothing, and often it's referred to as the moon-like because the moon is very soothing and very calming. So the moonlight rays are actually very peaceful for the mind. When you stand outside in the evening and you see the full moon, you always feel very calm and relaxed, right? And it's described in the Gita that the vegetables and the fruits, they actually get the sustenance from the moon, not just the sun. So there's beautiful moonlight rays. And yesterday was the beginning of the month of Purushottam. So the month of Purushottam only occurs once every 3 years. It's not an annual thing. And it's a very, very special month. So any service that you do, any tapasya that you do, any, chanting, extra rounds that you do, or extra service that you do, it all has very great benefit. Many, many times more. It acts like a desire tree to fulfill the devotee's dreams. And what are our dreams? Our dreams are to render service And like this verse is pointing out to us, it's that pure devotion that we're aiming for. So it's considered Krishna's favourite month. So we've been reading this chapter, how Lord Brahma manifested from the beautiful form of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So Krishna is the original personality of Godhead in full, all 64 qualities. And then from him, the three Purusha avatars or the incarnations appear as Karanaksha Vishnu, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and Hiradaksha Vishnu. So we've been learning about this for the last, few chapters, actually. But Krishna is the original. He's the original candle from which all other candles are lit. And in chapter 21, in this canto, it explains, I'll read this out to you, when one candle may light a second candle, with a second, a third, and then a fourth, and in this way one can light up thousands of candles, and no candle is inferior to another in distributing light. Every candle has the full potential candle power. But there is still the distinction that one candle is the first, another the second, another the third, and another the fourth. So similarly, there's no difference between the immediate expansion of the Lord and his secondary expansions, but Krishna is the original. And in the first canto, there's that verse, Ete kamsa kalaha pumsha, Krishnastu bhagavan swayam, indrari vai kulam lokam, ridayanti yuge yuge. And that means of all of the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord, but Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear on planets. Whenever there is a disturbance created by the atheists, the Lord incarnates to protect the theists. So often there's a little bit of a confusion, especially in India, that, oh no, Vishnu's the one. He's the everything comes from Vishnu. Lord Shiva, Krishna comes from Vishnu. But actually, the Sastra points out to us that actually no, Krishna is that original Supreme Personality of Godhead, and everything comes from him. So the whole material creation is actually conducted by these three Purushas. So Karanaksha Vishnu, he manifests the whole creation. Garbhodaksha Vishnu, he's within all the universes. And then Hiradaksha Vishnu, he's in the heart as Paramatma. So wherever we are, we're completely surrounded by the Lord. And Krishna himself has all attributes. Excuse me, and I was just thinking about this morning, I was thinking, now what are those 64 attributes? Because it's hard to remember all 64. So I did a quick search. And I'll read some of them out. I'll read half of them out because they're really beautiful. And we can meditate on those things and contemplate the qualities of Krishna. So his body is well constructed. He doesn't have any unsightly part. Everything's all in perfect symmetry. And Prabhupada said a sign of beauty is symmetry. His body is beautiful. His body is very glorious. His body is very strong. He always looks like a boy of 16. Well versed in various languages, he's truthful. He's decorated with pleasing words, expert in speaking. He's very learned, he's very intelligent, influential, joyful. I really like that quality, joyful, cunning, very cunning in his dealings with the gopis. He's expert, grateful, very grateful, firmly convinced nothing's going to sway his mind. He knows how to deal in different circumstances, so he's very sensitive to the environment. He's always conversant with scriptural injunctions. He's clean, controlled by his devotees. He's steady, self-controlled, forgiving, grave, fair in his dealings, and it goes on. There's another 30 odd. And if you would like to read those, you can go to the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, chapter 14. It elaborates on them. And Lord Narayan, as we know, he has 60 transcendental qualities. But Krishna has the 4 exceptional qualities that no one else has. Can anyone name one of them?
Well attractive.
Sorry?
Well attractive.
Well, his wonderful pastimes. His pastimes with the gopis, his flute playing, and as Radha Kundananda pointed out, his unsurpassed beauty. He's all attractive. No one can reach him. And then the Vishnu Tattva, they can get up to 93%, but they don't get those last 4. And Lord Shiva, he possesses almost 84%. And the Jiva, only up to the limit of 78%. And that's only when one is in the Jiva, that's the living being, is actually in a very pious body. So it's not, say, for example, that all of us have the 78%. No, we're too conditioned. But when the conditioning wears away, then we have that 78%. So this verse is referring to Garbhodaksha Vishnu. He's meditating on the bed of Anantasesha. And Anantasesha's coils form a beautiful, comfortable couch for Garbhodaksha Vishnu to rest in. And we've read in the previous verses, there's a golden lotus that comes out of the abdomen of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And he rests there for 1,000 celestial years. So he's just there in meditation, resting, and that's 2,160,000 of our years. So that when you talk about for example, the length of Brahma's life, even the length of celestial years, 1,000, it's very hard to comprehend. You know, we can't relate to it. We can hardly relate to, living 100 years, let alone 311 trillion, 30 million, 40 million years. And on Saturday, one of my favourite uncles passed away, and he was 97, and that's considered, wow, 97. And another devotee in our area, he's going to celebrate his father's 90th birthday in the next day or two. So, getting up to that age is pretty unusual. And I don't know if you get 100, I don't know if you still get a certificate from the Queen. She used to send out a message. So in this chapter, Maitreya, he's narrating to Vidura how Brahma appeared and his subsequent actions. And Maitreya wants to speak on this spotless Purana, the Bhagavatam, because as Prabhupada stated in text 2 in the purport, Srimad Bhagavatam is especially compiled and comes down in disciplic succession. So this disciplic succession is through, for the Bhagavatam in this context, is through Sanat Kumar, and we'll speak about that in a minute. So we're so fortunate that we've come in contact with the Bhagavatam, and we're very fortunate that we've come in contact with the person Bhagavat. So we have the book Bhagavatam, the Vedic scriptures, and they have the person Bhagavat, which is Srila Prabhupada. So when you think about, say, for example, you start thinking about the 1,000 celestial years, over 2 million years, and you think about all of these huge expanses of time. And we're so fortunate that some of us saw Srila Prabhupada. If you didn't, you've got all of Srila Prabhupada's lectures, his talks, his conversations, his books already on hand. You don't even have to go and buy the books. You can download them. You can listen to all his lectures on YouTube. You can listen to all of the memories about Prabhupada on YouTube. So technology has, some great benefits there that we can explore. So, that is very great fortune that we have, and we shouldn't fritter it away. And I was thinking this morning with Purushottam month, this is maybe a special month that we can all make that little extra endeavour Okay, what am I going to do? All right, every day I'm going to come to Mangalati. Every day I'm going to make sure I attend Guru Puja. Every day I'm going to chant a few extra rounds, just at least for this month. So you'll get that great spiritual upliftment. So we can think about that. What are we going to do in Purushottam month? I've already got my little plan. Let's see if I can do it. So Prabhupada describes this association with the Bhagavat, the book Bhagavat, the person Bhagavat. It's the remedy for eliminating all inauspicious things in our lives. So when we hear Srimad Bhagavatam through the voice of the pure devotee, like Srila Prabhupada, and his purports are his voice, that is so beneficial, because the voice of the pure devotee has touched the saffron mercy particles scattered on the Lord's lotus feet. So it's no ordinary thing. And when you hear Prabhupada's voice, I know in the morning when I get up, the first thing I do is put on the Prabhupada little audio device that many of us have, and immediately I feel peaceful. Immediately I'm just transported into listening to Prabhupada's voice. So I encourage everyone to try and at least every day listen to one lecture of Srila Prabhupada's. So, and the person Bhagavat is as good as the book Bhagavat. They're identical actually. So by pleasing the devotee Bhagavat, one can receive the benefit of the book Bhagavat. So just reading, anyone can buy a Bhagavad Gita. There's, over 5,000 editions. It's like huge numbers of various commentaries by different scholars. But they didn't make one devotee. And Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, look what that's done. And look what Prabhupada has done. All over the world, everyone, not everyone, but you can always hear the chanting of the holy name. So many temples. We can go from this temple, you're here at New Govardhana. If you go to another temple in Spain or India or, Europe, you'll have the same program. It's very unifying. We're unity in diversity. So in the earlier verse I alluded to before that we hear that Sanat Kumar, the chief of the four Kumaras, he heard Srimad Bhagavatam from the lips of Lord Shankarshan. And accompanied by other sages, including the other Kumaras, they came down from the highest planets down to where Garbhodaksha Vishnu was. And they heard the Bhagavatam. And they transported themselves by the Ganges, because the Ganges is flowing down from Mahavishnu's toes all the way through planets. So they glorified the Lord, and it's described with selected words full of affection and love. And then Lord Shankarshan, with his thousands of rays towards, began to radiate an effulgence from the glowing stones on his head. And then the four Kumaras, they presented many questions to Lord Shankarshan, and being enthused by the many questions, he answered them. So Srila Prabhupada, and I mentioned this in our IDC course on the weekend, Srila Prabhupada really liked it when we ask questions. And it's really good when you're sitting in Bhagavatam class, if you have a notebook. It's really valuable that you can jot down the main points, because we have Kali Yuga brains and we're listening attentively, and then we go to Prasadam and someone says, "What was that in class? What did we hear in class?" And you go, now what was it that we were listening to? It's really easy. I'm guilty of that. It's like, now hang on, what did we say? I may have really been enjoying the class, but I may have not retained it enough. So if you have a notebook, it's really good to do that. I try and bring a notebook to class when I can, and it helps our Kali Yuga brains. And then later on in the day, we can just go through the bullet point notes, and that will fix us up a little bit for the day. And it's really nice to, if maybe some questions you have, you can't, they're not answered to your satisfaction. You know, you ask the senior devotees, and if they're not answered to your satisfaction, then you can keep a list of those questions. And then when you email your spiritual master, or he comes and you have a darshan with him, you can ask him those spiritual questions. Because Prabhupada liked that very much. Of course, Prabhupada would always say, ask your temple managers first. If they can't answer it, then you can ask me. It's not that you bother your spiritual master with, questions that anyone else could, or any senior devotee could answer for you. But some questions that are a little bit tricky, a little bit gnarly, that you might not get a satisfactory answer to, then keep a little log of those, and then when you see your spiritual master, you can ask him directly. And Prabhupada explains that unless one hears from a proper authority, you actually can't be a successful preacher. So if you're hearing from Srila Prabhupada, hearing from those who are repeating what Srila Prabhupada says, then you have success in being able to disseminate that knowledge. But if we speculate, if we guess, then it's not going to have, very much value. And then by following the process, one develops a little bit of spiritual Shakti. There's a little bit of force behind what we're saying. But, if you're a bit lackadaisical and not really strict in following your sadhana, then you're not going to have as much potency, even though you may be repeating. So all of these austerities, they actually are very spiritually enlivening. And of course, doing something in Purushottam month, you really see, the benefit. So out of the 9 items of devotional service, Prabhupada explains that hearing and chanting are the most important. So we're hearing our japa, we're chanting our japa, we're hearing our japa, we're hearing Bhagavatam from the book Bhagavat, from the person Bhagavat, and we're repeating. So that hearing and chanting is very important. So while amongst those great sages, Shankayana was describing the glories of the Lord in reference to Srimad Bhagavatam. So that he was speaking to the Kumaras, Shankayana was listening, and then Parashara Muni, who was Maitreya Rishi's spiritual master, and also Brihaspati, they heard him. So then Parashara Muni subsequently spoke what he had heard to his disciple Maitreya Rishi. And so this is where we're at now. And what's Maitreya Rishi doing? He's speaking to Vidura. So it's coming down in this beautiful disciplic succession. That ripened fruit of the mango is being handed down from the top of the tree all the way down. So to sum that up, Lord Shankarshan spoke Bhagavatam to Sanat Kumar. Shankyayana Muni, who's a great transcendentalist and writer of many holy texts, he was listening. He passed that down to Parasara Muni, the spiritual master of Maitreya, and then Maitreya is now disseminating it to Vidura. And in the Bhagavad Gita in the 10th chapter, Krishna's talking about how actually nobody knows me. Nobody can know the source of their existence by which they come, no matter how much empiric study they may embark on. We can't. This ascending process of gaining knowledge will only end in frustration. It's mental speculation. It's the descending form of dissemination of knowledge coming from up high. That is the most potent, because it's coming from someone who knows what's going on, not someone who's trying to speculate the other way. And Krishna says, neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences. And it's not an easy thing to understand the Lord. We're reading these beautiful verses and we can understand to an extent what's being said. But if we don't develop the spiritual eyes, which means the spiritual ears, then it's very hard to understand Krishna. And in chapter 21 of Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada says that actually any man of knowledge and experience should see everything through these books. For example, with our naked eye, we perceive the sun globe simply as some glaring substance. But when we see through authorized books of science and other literature, we can understand how much greater the sun globe is. So when you're looking at the sun globe, okay, you've got your, yeah, it's really hot, it's far, far away, and that appears very small, and I can't look into the sun because it's going to blind me, and the sun, helps create all the fruit and the vegetables and growing of the herbs, etc. But actually, when we have more information, then we understand so much more about the sun globe. So many, it's the diameter, the force of the flames of the sun, etc. So going through, looking at something through the naked eye isn't actually seeing. But when you have the book Bhagavat and the person Bhagavat, that vision is actually sastra chakshus. You're seeing through the eyes of the sastra. So although Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and he can see all that is past, present and future, to teach the people in general, he actually used the sastra as well. He would cite the Vedas and Vedic injunctions, even though he's God himself. And he quoted Vedanta Sutra as the authority. So in the previous verse, it describes that the transcendental body of Garbhodaksha Vishnu was unlimited in length and breadth. And then we should understand that scholarship is not the qualification necessary to understand Krishna, because it's very hard with our limited knowledge, with our limited understanding, to grasp the enormity of what we read in Bhagavatam. It can be very daunting. So the qualification necessary to understand Krishna is explained by him. And in 10:10 in the Gita, he says, Tesham shatata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam tadami bhuti yogam tam yena mam upayante te. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. So it's all about love. It's all about the devotion. So the more we try and serve and the more we try and understand through the spiritual eyes of the scriptures, then we will make that advancement. And then we can eventually get closer and closer to Krishna. And Krishna says that to show special mercy, he says, I, dwelling within their hearts, destroy with a shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So we can pray very hard to Krishna and we serve him with love and devotion, then we can understand that Krishna will destroy our ignorance. We can't on our own little minute self scrabbling upwards, trying to understand. It's very difficult. But when we'll open ourselves to the mercy of the Lord by practicing seriously and with devotion, then Krishna, he says, I will disseminate, I will wipe away all of that ignorance. So that's very important. And it's interesting, so, there's supreme marketing material in here. So say if you want to go travelling to Siberia or Paris, there's lots and lots of marketing collateral you can look at that will draw you in. People post things on Facebook, you go, oh, that looks like a really good place. I'd really like to go there. So this chapter is like the inducement to make us want to go to the spiritual world. It's encouraging us. It's like perfect advertising there. So we're hearing about the birth of our Lord Brahma, where he comes from. We know that he's got 4 heads. And the essences are being displayed by the Lord And there are some varieties there. There's lots of varieties. And in the Brahma Samhita, it states, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Krishna, who's known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He is the prime cause of all causes. And in the Brahma Samhita, it's explained that the 62 verses of the Brahma Samhita that we have has the same conclusion as the 18,000 in Srimad Bhagavatam. And Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, in his commentary on the Brahma Samhita, he describes Krishna in this way, and this is really beautiful. Krishna's name is non-different from his beautiful heavenly blue-tinged body, which glows with the intense blending of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. He holds a flute in his two hands, and his spiritual energy enables him not only to be all-pervasive, but also to maintain a charming human-size form for loving exchanges. So we've been reading how vast the Virat Rupa is, how vast Garbhodaksha Vishnu is, how vast the universes are. But Krishna is so kind, he appears in a human-sized form, so we can offer all different things to him. Dress him beautifully, serve him beautifully. And I just want to quickly, because we're talking about the beautiful lotus feet, I just want to quickly read something. Describes the beautiful feet. I think it's 39 to 45. Bear with me for a sec. Because we've read these just in, not so long ago, but it's really nice to focus on these lotus feet of the Lord. And of course, the other lotus feet that we like to focus on is Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet, which I can tell you were very, very beautiful. So the demigods are saying, "Oh Lord, your lotus feet are like an umbrella for the surrendered souls." So we can think of this beautiful, soothing, this umbrella that we can take shelter under. Your feet are like an umbrella for the surrendered souls, protecting them from all the miseries of material existence. So when we're suffering, you can think of the lotus feet of the Lord. Therefore, they take shelter of the shade of your lotus feet, which are full of knowledge, and thus we can take shelter of them. The lotus feet of the Lord are by themselves the shelter of all places of pilgrimage. The great clear-minded sages, carried by the wings of the Vedas, always search after the nest of your lotus-like feet. Of your lotus-like face. So it's so beautiful, the wings of the Vedas. So you're imagining the wings like a bird, and it's seeking the nest of your lotus-like face. Some of them surrender to your lotus feet at every step by taking shelter of the best of rivers, the Ganges. Then simply by hearing about your lotus feet with eagerness and devotion, and by meditating upon them within the heart, one at once becomes enlightened with knowledge, and on the strength of detachment, one becomes pacified. And then the final verse, you assume incarnations for the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation, and therefore we all take shelter of your lotus feet, because they always award remembrance and courage. So if you're in a fearful situation, or you're forgetting things, just rely on Krishna's lotus feet. Very beautiful. And then the final one, is it final? No, there's one more. O Lord, persons who are entangled by undesirable eagerness for the temporary body and kinsmen, and who are bound by thoughts of mine and I, are unable to see your lotus feet, although your lotus feet are situated within their own bodies, as Paramatma. And then finally, O great Supreme Lord, offensive persons whose internal vision has been too affected by external materialistic activities cannot see your lotus feet, but they are seen by your pure devotees, whose one and only aim is to transcendently enjoy your activities. So there's so many beautiful images of Krishna's lotus feet and how we can focus on those. And, you know, the other very important thing to think about is the lotus feet of the pure devotee, the lotus feet of Krishna, of course. And when you're hearing the voice of the pure devotee, when you are listening to Srila Prabhupada's lectures, then you can remember this verse. It's in the 4th canto, and in the purport it explains also. It's when the voice of the pure devotee actually comes in touch with the saffron mercy particles scattered on the Lord's lotus feet. That voice has the power to help us remember our eternal relationship with the Lord. Although up until that moment, we may have forgotten everything. So Prabhupada's voice has great potency, the voice of the pure devotee. So we're all Prabhupada Anugas, we're following the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada, and we beg Sri Sri Radha Govardhana Dari for the shade of Prabhupada's lotus feet. And by getting the shade of Prabhupada's lotus feet, we will get the shade of Krishna's feet. And Prabhupada said, just hang on to my dhoti. I have a key to the back door. I will get you to the spiritual world. So we can develop our faith and trust in the book Bhagavat and the person Bhagavat. So thank you very much for listening. You have any comments? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Anton always has very good questions.
Krishnarupa Mataji, thank you very much for the lecture. I actually have 2 questions.
Two.
In purport, Srila Prabhupada says very wonderful thing. He says, Lord fulfills desires of all living beings. Very beautiful and strong statement, and one can misunderstand it or struggle to understand it, because also all living beings suffer in life. All living beings get sick and die. And if we look at our own lives, we fail so much. We pray for things and we do service and we try to achieve things, and still sometimes to great disappointment. We hardly achieve half of our desires. So could you help to understand that conflict that is to live?
Well, it goes back to the beginning in a way, which we can't ascertain when was the beginning, but we had that desire. We were in competition with Krishna. We had that desire to enjoy like Krishna. So just like the son may insist to the father, no, I really want to go and do this thing. I really want to go and set up this business. I've got an idea for a startup and it's going to be really good. And the father's going, yeah, it's not going to be so good. Have you considered this? Have you considered that? And the son goes, no, I really want to do it. So what's the father going to do? The father's going to go, okay, you go and do it. And of course he'll suffer the consequences of all of those things. So we desired to enjoy. And so Krishna said, okay, here you go. Here's the manifested universe you can enjoy. But he's also the loving father, so he needs to create an environment that we can actually learn from our lessons. Just like the father, when the son wants to set up a business, the father's not going to give him unlimited money. He goes, no, okay, you have to bear the consequences. So we have material desires, and as a result of those material desires, we have to suffer the consequences, right? There's an action and a reaction. And very unfortunately, in this material world, we can enjoy to this level, and explains that in Bhagavatam, we can enjoy to this level, but the commiserate reaction for that enjoyment is not the same level, it's higher. So we can enjoy a little bit, but our suffering will be great. So there's that material frustration where we're experiencing, pain and suffering, etc. But for the devotee desires to serve Krishna, desires to serve the spiritual master. They're trying to purify that desire for service. Krishna induces and Krishna sanctions. So when a devotee suffers, it's different to the suffering of a conditioned karmic soul. It's quite different. It's like Krishna creates a customized lesson for us. So if we see a devotee suffering, we don't think, oh wow, they must be really sinful, they're suffering. No, Krishna is giving them a customized lesson. But we can't escape, when we're not serving, automatically there's going to be sinful reaction. You're walking along the street, you're going to kill ants. And you shouldn't kill even a cockroach. So all of those things, that's accumulating the karma, the bad karma. But for a devotee, because we're trying to offer everything that we do, everything that we say, everything that we think, we're trying to offer that to the lotus feet, once again, the beautiful lotus feet of the Lord. But it's a challenge and it takes time. So did that answer your question?
Yes, good answer. Thank you very much.
Okay. And what was your second question?
My second question, it described in scriptures that in previous yugas, people could fulfill their desires by worshipping demigods, can do yagyas, and demigods would come personally to this world, people, and fulfill desire of person who does yajna. And because we in Kali Yuga, that doesn't happen anymore, so demigods do not come to this world anymore. My question is, while I understand that Krishna exists in this world through his extension of energies and as Paramatma in our heart, is it possible, or can one speculate that Krishna sort of like wind up clock? He wind up the mechanism, let it work, and he come back when the alarm goes on with this clock. So is it possible that he is not personally present to fulfill desires?
Well, because we're seeing through, or trying to see through sastra chakshus, through the eyes of the scripture, it does explain how Krishna is there in the heart. He's standing there in the heart. He doesn't even sit in the heart, he's standing there in the heart.
Personal aspect?
Yes, it's the Paramatma. And sometimes when you're very, very focused, sometimes, you get that really strong intuition sometimes that, oh, don't do this thing. That, we think it's intuition, but it's very likely it's the Supersoul or Paramatma. And that happens, it's not, like you don't take it lightly, or you speculate, oh yes, Paramatma told me that, I should do this or that. But that really quiet voice that's, telling you not such a smart thing to do, that can be the Supersoul that's telling you. And I've had a couple of experiences like that, only a couple. So you don't want to get, all kind of in your head and think, oh yes, Paramatma is talking to me. No, we're conditioned. But he's there and he's witnessing all of our activities. You know, in the Gita it explains you have the two birds on the tree. One bird is doing, which is the jiva, which is us, and the other bird is witnessing, which is the super soul. So Krishna is always with us, and we can, you know, develop that relationship with Krishna. We don't need to feel alone, because the Lord is right there. And sometimes that can be worrying too, because you go, oh, right, Krishna's witnessing everything that I'm doing. So that's also a good way of you know, keeping on our toes. The Krishna's there, and he induces and he sanctions. So he induces us to serve, and he sanctions our service. And then in between those things, you can think, oh, well, if Krishna's inducing me to serve, and I can only serve if he sanctions, then I'll just pray to Krishna for inducement. And I asked that question to Banaswami, and Banaswami said, but there's the endeavour. One has to endeavour. So we need to be patient, put one foot in front of the other, and just keep on endeavouring. And if we trip up, what do? You get up and you keep up on the path again. But Krishna is there. He's there in his Archa Vigraha, he's there in our hearts. And he's also there in the spiritual world, he's also there in one planet somewhere, enacting all of his wonderful pastimes. Okay, all right, thank you very much everyone. Hare Krishna, glories to Srila Prabhupada.